The Charlotte Hornets did something on the trade deadline. The question is, did we like it? We'll talk about it today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. I'm Walker Mail. Catch me on WFNZ from 12 to 3, 92.7 FM. And you can also catch Doug Branson, my co-host, on his Substack, writing all of the latest reports about the Charlotte Hornets. His Substack is Every Hornets Boxscore. Find it at everyhornetsboxscore.com. All right, Doug, going to lead with this real quickly. Jalen McDaniels, he gets traded. You net 1 second-round pick. Mason Plumlee, he gets traded. You net Reggie Jackson, a buyout candidate, and also a 2028 second-round pick. We're going to dive into the details right away. I just wanted your feelings first as we sit here after trade deadline day, because the Hornets did something. They did. Rod Boone, I know, and Rod Boone warned us in the Charlotte Observer. He was like, well, you don't want the Hornets to do something just for the sake of doing something. And we were sitting here, au contraire, my friends. You know what? We want to see some action, baby. And then we're like, okay, maybe you're right, Rod. Maybe that's why you're the professional.
I think that there is room, Walker, to both be encouraged that they did something and also to be a little frustrated that they didn't go far enough. I'm certainly torn because we did set the bar very low. Do something, not do everything, not do everything perfectly, not bring back a ton of assets. We just wanted them to do something because I think you and I recognized both that it wasn't working, the product on the floor wasn't working, that it wasn't going to work, and that Steve Clifford was going to do his damnedest to make it work unless the front office stepped in and took away some of his keys. And I think that the sort of 30,000-foot idea here is that that's what the organization did. They took away a couple of keys that, look, Clifford was not going to bench Mason Plumlee. He wasn't going to stop playing Jalen McDaniels. Both of those players contributed to the few wins that they've had this season and would contribute to future wins. And so in that way, they did take a few of the keys. So I think there's room for both of those feelings. I'm conflicted. I think a lot of Hornets fans are disappointed. I think they have every right to be because, you're not going to have any positive vibes about this season. I don't expect fans to be, super elated about a bunch of not even a bunch, just a couple of second-round picks.
That's correct. That's correct. It was actually on the lower tier of amount of second-round picks that some of the teams received yesterday. I thought that was a fantastic tweet from you yesterday saying, if you don't get your Valentine's sweetheart 5 second-round picks, then what are we doing? I mean, that's going to be a slap in the face.
I said you're a bum. You got to go out there and get the second round. Yeah, I mean, people were throwing out second-round picks like they were candy. I mean, it was crazy. 5 second-round picks were going for players that I didn't think were worth that many draft picks, and then you lose Jalen essentially for one draft pick. I thought it was multiple draft picks. I went on the radio to defend the deal a little bit because I thought it was multiple. Of course, the information is changing. I think I came on 15 minutes after the deal. The information changes all the time, and then we find out the Hornets sent a second-round pick out, so you net one second-round pick for Jalen McDaniels, who you drafted in the second round. You did all of this work to develop into a player that was attractive to teams. Utah was interested. Phoenix was interested. Ultimately, both of those teams decided not to deal for Jalen, but then you do trade Jalen, and you only get one pick back. It's crazy.
So let's go to the details real quickly. So what happened is the Hornets acquired a 2023 second-round draft pick from Philadelphia, a 2027 second-round draft pick from Portland, and forward Svi Mykhailiuk. If you're a college basketball fan, you remember him from Kansas. He's bounced around the league to a couple of different teams. And they acquired Mykhailiuk from the New York Knicks. As a part of a 4-team deal, the Hornets, they sent out Jalen McDaniels and New York's 2024 second-round draft pick to Philadelphia. So you're right. You only netted a 2023 second-round pick. Now, you are going to have a second round pick in this very deep draft class. I understand that. And maybe you're going to package that with something to move up in this draft class. At the same time, you're right, Doug. Here's my problem, right? We all know if you listen to Locked On Hornets, you knew as soon as you clicked on this podcast what I was going to think about this deal, because I've been singing the praises of Jalen McDaniels for quite a bit. I've always tried to keep that within range of what we should feel about Jalen. I don't think he's the best player in the world. We all get that. This is the type of guy that you keep on a contract where I don't think he's going to get paid a lot of money. He is a 3-and-D, can throw in any offense, and he'll work just fine because he's not going to call for the ball a lot. If you don't trust his passing, if you don't trust him putting in the ball on the deck, fine. The goal is to not allow him to do that as much anyway, because you want more talented players to have the basketball in their hands. And then Jalen can come in at a Cody Martin type contract. Is he going to make $10 million a year? I'd be honestly fine with that. And then you net 1 second-round draft pick. And so if that second-round draft pick isn't used to move up in the NBA draft to go get somebody better, if it's not used to then select somebody like Jalen McDaniels or even better, then I'm not sure why you would have traded him. Because it's not like, look, this whole PJ Washington and Jalen McDaniels thing, yes, it does look like they're trying to create more room for PJ. And it's not like you wanted to be completely, you didn't want to be, and maybe they don't. I don't know. I saw the face, but even if you wanted to save enough money to pay PJ, it doesn't mean you have to trade Jalen McDaniels for less than what I thought his value was or what the perceived value was, right? Sometimes perception is reality in the NBA. And if there are so many teams linked to Jalen, then I would imagine you could squeeze a team for something more than this. But here you are getting a 2023 second round pick. Yeah, I'm underwhelmed as hell, Doug. So it just doesn't, it's not the worst thing in the world, right? This is not the type of move that's going to break the Charlotte Hornets and they're not going to be able to come back from it. But to me, it is a piece of evidence, in my opinion, that goes under the bad business category.
Yeah, I made the face because I think that this move is also about possibly Miles Bridges. If the team does intend to bring him back, then all of a sudden you're keeping Gordon because you have no choice. Now you have a glut at forward. And I think both of these moves and the lack of the sort of full-scale fire sale that I think you and I were calling for, I think is a little bit of a signal that this team knows that it's bad enough to compete for one of those top 3 picks, but also is still trying to get cute a little bit and maybe set themselves up to both have their cake and eat it too, to get one of those top 3 draft picks and possibly make a run at a play-in spot or a playoff spot next season. And so, Jalen McDaniels in that scenario, if we play that game all the way out, is going to be on the fringe of the rotation, right? And so then how do you re-sign that guy? Can you even re-sign that guy? Because he would be an unrestricted free agent at that point. Could you even bring him back? And so then when you compound that with the idea that, again, I think you did want to take some keys away from Steve Clifford. You did want to take some pieces away to maybe position yourself to be a little worse in this back half. I would have loved to get more second-round picks for Jalen McDaniels, but I don't know what those negotiations were like. I'm disappointed, but at the same time, I'm just trying to figure out what the vision of the Charlotte Hornets is, and that's on them, really. They got to message this. I really hope they come out and say why they did this deal. I don't really have hope for it, but I hope they do.
Well, you saw the report that they're not. Mitch Kupchak's not speaking. Apparently, and so Will Kunkel put out there on Twitter that Mitch Kupchak's not going to speak to media after the trade deadline. Kyle Bailey, my colleague at WFNZ, he quote tweeted that and said a league source told him Mitch Kupchak is out scouting right now. And look, if it was a bigger move, fine. Then I think you would be calling for it. It's all just a little, okay, I wish you'd do this. Okay, I wish you would do this. And they're just a bunch of little things that mount up into something where you do get a little bit more frustrated than each of these individual things by themselves.
Well, and once again, as an organization, you're allowing everyone else to set the narrative for you instead of coming out and getting ahead of it and saying, hey, here's why we did this thing. I'm going to tell you why we did this thing, and I'm going to tell you why it's a positive move for the future. You don't do that. You instead let everyone set the narrative for you that you only got a couple of second-round picks, that you don't know what you're doing, that, So look, if that's the way the organization wants to play it, then I think fans have every right to make any kind of judgment they want about the team because the Hornets aren't out defending these deals. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to get out ahead of it, but that's what they've chosen to do.
Well, and to be fair, if Mitch Kupchak chose to, he would probably say something wrong, and then we'd make fun of him. So I guess there is the catch-22 in that regard. Mitch, can you do a Mitch Kupchak impression about this trade? I'm asking you to perform for me like a jester, but I am asking for that because people love it, Doug. So if you'll please give us a Mitch Kupchak impression.
How I love second-round picks. I collect them. I put them in a case. It's a well-appointed case, I love second.
And then Rich Cho tries, to steal him and then trade him for something underwhelming. So there's the exact antithesis there. Real quickly, some clarification on the second round pick. So Charlotte trades McDaniels and the 2024 Knicks second round pick, and they receive the more favorable of Atlanta's, Charlotte's, Brooklyn's, and Philadelphia, or via Philadelphia's 2020 and. Goodness gracious. And
I feel
the 2027
I feel like it's that
favorable.
meme. What is the meme with Winona Ryder where like all of the little math things are falling down and she's like, oh, yeah. I don't know where to look. Like that's me. But that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing about the second round picks is that nobody knows what any of it means. They're probably not even going to select in those picks anyway. They're going to package those picks,
Correct.
become someone else's picks. It becomes someone else's picks. It's like playing ping pong. None of it matters. And that's why ultimately I think even getting bothered by the idea that they only got 1 second round pick is a little bit ridiculous because like what do these even mean? I don't even know anymore. I'm so confused.
Well, yeah, you would want something. I mean, that seems more valuable than. I mean, we're choosing not to read clarification that's right in front of my face because I don't want to bore the listeners, right? Like that's how bad it is. That is something that I'm choosing for content's sake to not read some of the details because I'm not even sure people could grasp it. I can't grasp it, so make fun of me if you could. All right, let's. I want to talk more about the keys thing. You talked about that, plus Mason Plumlee. He also got traded, so we'll get to that in just a moment. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Was the Mason Plumlee trade worth it? And are some of the returning players like Mikhailuk and Reggie Jackson, are they going to be on the roster for the rest of the season? Longer than that? We'll get to that in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is something you can try for 30 days for free, and that should be enough time to try and completely forget about a subscription or a service because it helps you cancel those unwanted subscriptions. They cost a ton of money. Most Americans think they spend around $80 a month on subscriptions, when actually the total is closer to $200. And if you don't know exactly how much you're spending every month, you need Rocket Money. The average person has around 12 paid subscriptions. Think about that. If you think you're only subscribed to a handful of services, you might want to double check. With Rocket Money, you can quickly identify and cancel all of your unwanted subscriptions. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. Over 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about, like that streaming service you bought just to watch one show on, or that free trial that you never even used at the end in the first place. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel those unwanted subscriptions. Manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. rocketmoney.com/LockedOnNBA. Mason Plumlee trade coming up next.
Is Locked On Hornets.
Mitch Kupchak, will he do the thing that he has not done in season this entire
Anything.
time?
The thing that he has not done
It
is
always
anything.
comes back to do something.
Just do one thing.
You need to get a stick from outside and become the meme in person because it always comes back to do something.
Do something.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Doug, do we need to figure out a way? Do we alter our message to the people? Because, the do something thing, should we alter it to do something smart, do something above average? Do we alter our messaging, or do we just keep it the same for next time?
Well, I mean, I think it's difficult. Look, Jalen McDaniels was a good player was not a great player. Mason Plumlee was a good player, was not a great player. I mean, I think it's a miracle they got any deals done, honestly, with the track record combined with, I think, the level of talent that they were trying to move. I mean, it's pretty clear that both Jalen McDaniels and Mason Plumlee were people's backup to the backup plan, or maybe the backup plan, but probably the backup to the backup plan. So the fact that they got anything done. So no, I think, I think our messaging was fine. I think they got something done. I mean, it's not a popular opinion. I get it. People are upset right now. And again, they have every right to be upset because the team is not coming out and even defending these deals. So, I get it.
Well, and Philadelphia, I wonder if that was Philadelphia's backup plan. I mean, because I don't think I had even heard them linked to anybody else, but we had heard them linked to Jalen, and plus, Daryl Morey trying to figure out how to work around the cap up there. So let's get to the Mason Plumlee trade, and then we can talk about it in totality a little bit more. So Mason Plumlee, close to the buzzer, was traded to the LA Clippers, and you traded him to LA, and you acquired a 2028 second-round draft pick, Reggie Jackson, and, of course, cash considerations, which they traded for before, right? Or they actually traded for Brad Wanamaker. But anyway, yeah, they're bringing back some cash considerations and a 2028 second-round draft pick. So this news comes in, and at the time, all we knew was that you were getting Reggie Jackson in return, and that was about it. And then live on air, I was like, look, this doesn't make sense as far as a value standpoint. Reggie Jackson actually could help you right now. He plays a little bit of defense, can shoot the three, can provide some rim pressure, but you didn't trade Terry Rozier. So what are we doing? You're trading Mason. And so I understand Reggie's making a little bit more money, but they're both on expiring contracts. It's not a lot more money to be saving a wide gap on your payroll, this season. So, the Reggie Jackson thing, he's a buyout candidate. He smelled like a buyout candidate.
It looks like the reports are that the Hornets are moving. Yeah. If they haven't already done it, they're moving towards buyout. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's something that I anticipated immediately upon bringing Reggie Jackson in. And so you get that second round pick, and that's later coming in, right? I'm way less mad with this deal, Doug. I will say this. If we're talking about again, perception of Mason Plumlee, I was watching the NBA show yesterday, NBA Today, and Bobby Marks said Mason Plumlee was the best deal that the Clippers made. And the Clippers made, four of some in the same ilk, right? In the same category of, some smaller moves like that. And Bobby Marks' favorite trade was the Mason Plumlee deal. So I just don't want Charlotte to be the whipping boy of the trade market. And you talked about the track record, right? Like you talked about, it's okay to be upset with this team. And are people looking at Charlotte and saying like, all right, well, we'll just give them a second round pick and we'll just take whatever we want from there. I don't know how much more value you could have gotten from Mason. Fine. Right. We had hypothesized second round picks, multiple. That's what we kind of hypothesized when there was a report about them wanting a first round pick. We had kind of guessed, hey, can you get multiple seconds? That's probably what you're talking about. They only get one. With Jalen, look, I know Nada put out there a big old value, on Jalen. I think he said maybe even multiple or just keep him, right? Multiple first round picks. I thought maybe a protected.
I didn't even think a first. Look, a Jalen is not even worth a first round pick. Like I
thought protected. I thought protected. Yeah, I had no problem with a protected first round pick, and nothing.
Apparently, every other NBA team had a problem with it. They couldn't get it done.
Okay. Well, for sure. But yes, also a lot of other NBA teams were very interested in Jalen McDaniels, and then eventually Charlotte traded. But this is how it goes, right? Like you're talking about all these teams that are interested, and then eventually they get just the 1 second round pick. And, this is, to me, it always made more sense to just keep Jalen, right? But with Mason, I'm saying that this is a deal that I like a lot better than the one that we saw before.
It doesn't make sense to keep Jalen if you don't think you have any interest in re-signing him, or that you even think you could compete to re-sign him if you've got other moves in mind. That's what I'm saying. Because keeping Jalen McDaniels for the rest of this season makes you better. Svi is not going to really – I don't think Svi makes you better if they even plan to play Svi.
So this wasn't like – so with the whole Keys thing, right? Like, did you take away enough for you to actually, to have a significant impact on how much you win games? Because here we are talking about,
we'll see.
Not even, you could argue that Mark Williams, defensively, Mark Williams is better than Mason Plumlee. And so if you're going to put him out there and he's going to be playing more minutes, then you actually are better in one area. All right, so maybe that negates a little bit of how much better or worse you are with Mark Williams going out there. When Gordon Hayward is healthy, Gordon Hayward's starting. When PJ's healthy, he's starting. So you're talking about a bench player in Jalen, which matters. But now you're talking about if the guys remain healthy, and then plus if Kelly Oubre comes back, then you're talking about some reinforcements even without Jalen McDaniels. And so when we talk about taking the keys away, I'm not even sure how much they really did that. And then you're getting a second-round pick. Here's the thing that helps this, right? If you think that you can package the 2023 second-round pick that you received in the Jalen deal, and then you can move up, and then you get somebody and he works out long-term, great, I'll shut up. But and you're right, Jalen's not a great player. There wasn't a whole lot of people knocking down the door. There wasn't a whole lot of first-round picks switched hands anyway. And I'm not saying that other teams didn't think that there was a first-round pick that was worth trading for Jalen. Right. Like, we get values wrong all the time, right? So I'll be wrong on that. But to me, it still felt underwhelming as far as sending him out to a team. Like, hell, we're wrong on values all the time. That's just how it is. So, yeah, teams disagreed, whatever. But to me, it made sense more to keep him, especially when we see the fallout 24 hours later.
Well, and there weren't a lot of first-round picks being tossed around. That just wasn't. That's
what I'm saying.
Market. Yeah, I mean, it was more. Everything was second-round value. I think like two teams sent first-round picks in all of the deals that we saw. So it was a lot of player movement. It was a lot of second-round draft compensation movement. There just wasn't the appetite for that, and particularly, I think, again, on a player like Jalen, who has played the starter role when there were injuries, but immediately it just hasn't made the kind of impact that I think would precipitate a first-round pick coming back. But and the same goes for Mason Plumlee, right? I mean, we had talked about, maybe I think the first round really comes from a sense of desperation, and the market has to be perfect. And this market wasn't. There were a lot of buyers, but there's also going to be a strong buyout market. I think some of these teams, like a Boston or others that didn't really get involved in some of these deals, I think they look at the buyout market and they go, okay, there are going to be some opportunities there, so I don't have to completely empty my wallet here to make a run. Or they look at the situation and go, actually, counterintuitively, there are so many people that think they can compete that this is going to be a super competitive run to the playoffs. And, a lot of teams haven't really separated themselves. So it would be silly for us to go make a couple of fringe moves, give up a bunch of assets only to get bounced by just a sneaky 6 seed or something. So, I think there were a lot of factors going into it. But yeah, I mean, look, I am not going to argue with you on the idea that they didn't do enough. I don't think they did enough. I don't know that they took enough keys away. This team is already playing poorly, but Kelly Oubre's coming back. They didn't trade Kelly. Cody Martin may come back. They're going to get some rest over the over the All-Star break. So yeah, I mean, there is the potential that they do play better and they work themselves out of position for one of these top 3 or top 4 draft picks. And I think that would be devastating. And I think the organization would earn criticism for that. Mm-hmm.
And if it happens, yeah, that would be that, because that's what you're looking for right now. And they're the 4th worst team in the NBA, and you're not going to move out of the bottom 4. Like, it's really a race within those, right? I mean, you're talking about Orlando, that I believe is the 5th worst team or close to it. And then, the Lakers got better. They were kind of close to that area, but it's really going to be between the Pistons, the Spurs, the Hornets, and the Rockets. So that's who the teams are going to be battling for that number 1 overall spot.
But I mean, and maybe we can talk about this in the last segment. I don't know what you tell people that would buy tickets to games or season tickets. I don't know what I don't know how they're supposed to feel about any of this. I don't know what the direction of the team is. And as you said, they're not really talking about these moves. They haven't really talked about sort of the long-term vision of the franchise. Maybe Miles Bridges and his future has something to do with that. They don't know how that's going to shake out, and they don't want to talk about it. But I'm very confused. As a fan of the team myself, I'm super confused about everything that we've seen really since the previous offseason. I don't know what I struggle, because I'm supposed to come here and talking to this microphone and explain what's going on here. It's really tough to do that when you don't even have a clear vision from the organization on which to base either criticism of that vision or support of that vision. There's just no vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. We'll try to make sense of it all and still be confused. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
What do the Hornets do from here? How are they going to look like on the court now that you don't have Jalen McDaniels and you do not have Mason Plumlee? We'll get to that in just a moment. But this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. You can download the FanDuel app now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, it's secure, and it's super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. One more segment to go. Locked On Hornets
Is Locked On Hornets.
But I have seen him go all the way up to number 10. That was. Is there a warning? Do we need to get out of here?
Okay, here's the thing. I don't know if you heard, but my watch went off, and I was trying to silence it, and then I accidentally hit ping the phone, and then the phone pinged, and now here we are. I'm doing my best, man.
It seems like you're doing your very worst.
Well, sometimes
it seems like I'm actively fighting you today to move.
Sometimes my best is my worst.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Doug, the other reason that you like the Mason Plumlee trade a lot more is, and it's the brightest spot that we get here today after the trade deadline. It's the fact that you're going to see a lot more Mark Williams. That is the brightest spot. That is the thing that you come away with most excited about because your first round pick, who has been playing great off of the bench, he has been providing hope, and it is at a position we have been clamoring for ever since Al Jefferson left the Charlotte Bobcats / Charlotte Hornets. And Mark Williams has done an excellent job. I would imagine that he starts and he plays a lot more minutes than the 15 he had been basically getting off of the bench. And that's an exciting thing for Charlotte Hornets fans.
He should start. It's not a guarantee at this point because he has been sharing.
Right.
Yeah, he's been sharing the backup role with Nick Richards. They've been swapping them in and out, but it seems like the swaps have benefited Mark more than they have Nick. It seems like Mark's getting a little bit more time than Nick. That would signal that, because Nick Richards did play a significant role as the backup center early in the season, and now it looks more like everything's shifting towards Mark. So that's good news. He should start. And then you have to wonder, is this good news for Kai Jones as well, who, when he has played, has had to play out of position. You go all the way back to Summer League. He played out of position at the 4 spot. I really want to see what Kai Jones can and can't do at the spot that he would play, if he got significant time, which is the center position. So do they now shift that sort of swappy with Kai Jones and Nick Richards? That's what I'm interested to see. Could this be good news for Kai as well?
Well, and I think, maybe, I feel like I've maybe figured out the formula as to when you're going to see more Nick Richards in a backup role. And it looks like it's a little swap. I'm not sure how relevant that was to my point, but I think people are going to love it. Put it on a t-shirt. So I think the method here is the second night of a back-to-back. That's when Nick Richards is going to get time. If you go look at the back-to-back that you had against Utah and Phoenix on the road, Mark Williams plays 18 minutes against Utah. And then the next night, Mark Williams only plays 6 minutes. You go back to the other back-to-back scenario, Chicago on the road, 17 minutes. The 1 minute that he played against Detroit and had people frustrated, that's when Nick Richards got some playing time. So, Mark Williams had taken over really that backup role. And then the second night of back-to-backs, Nick Richards was getting that spot. You're right. I still don't feel comfortable saying Mark Williams is going to be the outright starter. Part of that is because we know Steve Clifford appeases to the veterans. But the other thing is, it's not like you have a pure veteran at the center position. Nick Richards is only a year older than what Mark Williams is, 2 years older. So not that big of a gap there. On the wing now, with Kelly Oubre out, Cody Martin out, you don't have that depth anymore, which nobody cares about. That's one thing, like with the McDaniels trade, as much as I don't like it, it's not because they don't have depth this year. I want depth for when they are ready to go at this thing. But they have Gordon Hayward. They have PJ Washington, who's a 4 anyways, not like really a 3. You never want to see him really at the 3. So, yeah, their depth with injuries and no longer having Jalen McDaniels, that's what's kind of depleted here. And now you're bringing in Gordon Hayward, who is also very injury prone. So what do you expect to see out there on the wing this year, Doug?
Well, you probably see a little bit more of JT Thor, who was getting some playing time anyway. Clifford seems to like when JT Thor's out there, how the Hornets play. You're getting defense. You're not getting free throw shooting. Unfortunately, he missed some of those key free throws that lost them a couple of games ago. But you are getting some competent defense. You are getting an occasional Thorner 3, a Thor 3 from the corner, if you will.
I think that works.
Thorner,
works.
Mm-hmm. Thorner 3, Yep. So you get that occasionally. But with Jalen leaving, Jalen's offense was inconsistent, but when it was on, he was a potent, weapon off of the bench. And it did provide that bench a little bit of a lift, because that bench, without Kelly Oubre, without Cody Martin, there's just no offense. I mean, when they break the lineup, they struggle to score so mightily. It really is all on Terry Rozier or LaMelo Ball, whoever's out there with that bench unit. They've had to do all of the heavy lifting offensively, and now it gets even worse with Jalen. So what I'm thinking is, does this mean more Bryce McGowans, or do we see a return of James Bouknight to possibly give that bench unit a little bit more of an offensive punch? So we'll see. I mean, I think you're going to see I don't think you're going to see a set rotation really for the rest of the season, right? I think there's going to be some games where it's like, all right, Bouknight gets a look here until Kelly Oubre and Cody Martin come back and they're healthy. And then, I think some of the fringe guys like McGowans and Bouknight will slide back a little bit, but we'll see. It'll be super interesting. I think once again, these young guys have an opportunity to show something. They've had multiple opportunities this season. Some, like Bryce McGowans, have shined. Others, like James Bouknight, have not. But I think they're going to get a second opportunity now.
So, just taking a look at some of the pieces that weren't traded, rapid fire here, Doug, because there were a lot. Kelly Oubre, I always thought it was going to be hard after
Injury.
He suffered ligament. Well, yeah, 100%. After he suffered the ligament damage in his shooting hand, right, and that's how he makes his bread. And so when he's not effective for another couple of weeks, and who knows, the guy wasn't even shooting in warmups with his shooting hand when Rod Boone put that video out like a week or two ago. Yeah, I'm not surprised that Kelly Oubre didn't get any suitors.
Well, no, and when Rod Boone does the write-up of Kelly Oubre essentially begging to stay, that's not only a signal to the franchise, right? That's a signal to other teams. Like, hey, if you trade for me, it's not like I'm going to be super thrilled about it. I don't want out. So I think another team would look at that and go, all right, well, we could trade for Kelly, but you got the injury. Plus, it just doesn't seem like he wants to be traded. So would he even really enjoy being here once he does get healthy? So, yeah, I didn't put much of a chance of that happening really at all.
Well, and just to it's the kind of guy that you're going to possibly lose for nothing. That's still a possibility. And so when you're talking about that, you could see some criticism coming their way. But you're right. Like the injury, it completely torpedoed his trade value, especially if you're trading for him on an expiring contract to make a run at this thing. And if you don't have him, if you have zero clue what you're going to get, I understand how hard that would have been to trade Kelly. So going elsewhere, Gordon Hayward, I mean, that was, it's funny. We had heard rumors. Jalen McDaniels was at the top of that list, right? Like even with Mason, with us realizing Mason was probably the most tradable piece out there, because one, we didn't know if Charlotte was willing to trade Jalen. We pretty much knew Charlotte would be willing to trade Mason Plumlee. It just, everything made sense to move him. Yeah. But we saw a lot of teams interested in Jalen. We saw some with Mason. Some had been linked to Terry Rozier, maybe a little bit with Kelly, maybe earlier on. Doug, I can't think of a single team this year that was linked to be interested in Gordon Hayward. And that's not been true in previous seasons, right? Like I think maybe we've seen one or two. But this year, I didn't expect him to get traded at all, and it always made more sense in the offseason if there was going to be a move made.
And he's the one guy of all of those trade candidates who had some serious negatives with the injuries that he sustained. And the perception around him is that he's injury prone. And that's also a reality as well. But also didn't really showcase in a way that Mason Plumlee showcased, in a way that Jalen McDaniels showcased, to be perfectly honest. Gordon Hayward, I think, is super important on like a underground level to what the Hornets are trying to do. But at the same time, he's not super aggressive offensively. He hasn't been. And he's not doing things in a way that, again, as another team, you would go, oh, wow, we can super integrate that into our system and make us better immediately. That's not what's happening. I think the Hornets, really what I hope the Hornets do at this point is so we've seen this so many times with the organization where they get into a bad situation, and then right as they're about to get out of the bad situation, they flip that bad situation into another bad situation, whether it's Nick Batum,
right,
Dwight Howard, blah, 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 down the line. It just flows. The river of poop just continues to flow. And they don't just get some beavers in there and dam it up. They just say, no, we're going to let the river of poop continue to flow. So I hope it just stops with Gordon Hayward. They just let it flame out and then just move on after that.
Did you just bring poop beavers into the analysis?
It has been that's what it's been like for the past couple of years, just a bunch of poop beavers.
That's what you hire, right? You hire beavers to stop the poop. And as soon as you do that, then you're starting to get on the right track.
If you really think about it, it makes sense.
100%. Final thing, Terry Rozier, the most interesting trade candidate, right? Because of the contract, because of how he could help another team, those chances of him getting traded diminished pretty I would say decently when you're talking about the Lakers making moves
on the Westbrook deal.
Russell.
Really, that was it. But,
Phoenix.
You could talk about a lot of other things, but Westbrook was the only shot. And what happened was
Minnesota, a little
Phoenixy.
Yeah, I thought Phoenix was at least. You're right though.
Then KD had. Well, so that's the thing. Yes, in a universe where KD doesn't happen, where Kyrie doesn't happen, because Kyrie happening caused KD to happen. Okay, and then Minnesota happened. In a universe where Minnesota got off to a much better start and it wasn't completely confusing. I don't want to say it's a disaster there, but it hasn't gone anywhere near where they wanted it to go. And so then they decide to ship out Russell to fix it. So in a scenario where those things don't happen, I think the Hornets are better set up at the trade deadline. But those things did happen, and I think both of those things hurt the Hornets.
Yeah, 100%. And so Terry is on this team. Gordon Hayward is still on this team. Jalen McDaniels, Mason Plumlee, the two guys traded at the deadline. We can talk a little bit more about it as we gather some more thoughts over the weekend. We'll see how the Hornets perform. They do have a game against the Boston Celtics, a championship contender with the new look Tank City Hornets. It's going to be a poop river. Where
were you, Boston? I thought you were going to trade for Mason. I thought we would get a revenge game right off the bat. No, okay.
They went for Bucknell's finest, Mike Muscala, instead. So that's what they decided to do.
Championship. Give him the trophy.
100%. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. Again, check us out anywhere you get your pods. Also, make your second listen, Game to Game NBA. It's every moment. It's every top performance. They have every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every single game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, again, wherever you get your podcast. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday.